Hello, my name is Jared Perkins, and I'm a congregant at the Dogma of Angra Mainyu. Today, I will be taking you through the Ahrimani Virtues as found in Ashemaogha. This is Dastur Adam's new book, and if you've already read Ahrimani Enlightenment, or First Step Towards Ahriman, this is going to be the book that you're going to want next. So today, I'm going to be talking about the Ahrimani Virtues, the first of which is vengeance. The will of the Father is the law of vengeance, the favor of Akatasha to the deeds done in this world for Mainyu. He who feeds the fulfilled makes Angra father. This is our sacred mantra and our only law. Akatasha is another name for the Deva Akamana. Akamana is over evil thought, and that leads to evil action. So basically what this means is that you have to get into the headset and perspective of what it means to be a traditional Ahrimanist. You have to be able to think from that perspective before you can start taking the actions and speaking the words that are going to be true to the religion and to the faith and to the carrying out of your religious duties. Okay, so, and obviously vengeance is one of the ways to that. So if someone wrongs you, if you're thinking like an Ahrimanist, you're thinking, well, how am I going to make them pay? That is to say, how am I going to get recompense? How am I going to heal this injury that has been inflicted upon me by another person? And you know, as it says in our teachings, you take that to whatever degree that you see fit. You know, this is a very personal thing for people, and but you have to be able to think from that mindset of there is a way to even the scales, because you're giving yourself that power in a situation. That you have the power to alter the circumstances and alter the reality that you've been trapped into by people who want to subjugate you or who want to see you fall, if that makes sense. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. And the next Ahrimani virtue is cast iron constitution and will. And I mean, that seems pretty self-explanatory, really, is that you basically cannot let anyone break your spirit. Don't let anyone break your spirit. No matter what they do to you, no matter what they threaten you with, don't let that force you to change and force you to act outside your own moral code and your own boundaries that you've discovered through your journey of self-investigation that you go through with the nightly rituals. And you find those in Ahrimani Enlightenment. Like I said, that's one of the first books that you're going to want. Okay. The next Ahrimani virtue is fidelity. And again, all these are available in Dastur Adam's new book, Ashemaogha. It's for sale now. Here soon, we hope to have packages ready for people who are interested in purchasing the book, but also getting a little bit more. So we want to include like ritual robes, an athame, your own quartz crystal, things like that that you're going to want to be able to have. You have to have them ready, you know, sort of mise in place, except instead of with ingredients where you're cooking a recipe, this is where you're doing sorcery and casting a spell, and you need components for that as well. So that's just having those things in place. And we want to be able to carry out that service and provide for people, folks who want to get down with the program. So, fidelity. I am a living embodiment of Ahzi-Dahaka, and I rule over myself. I watch over those who watch over me. This virtue of fidelity only codifies faithfulness to the traditional Ahrimanic religion, those within the religion, those closest to you, and to yourself. Those who are without and have no credence within are tools and fodder used to attain whatever goals that are necessary for either the group or the self. It is this loyalty that unites traditional Ahrimanists as one culture, and that allows it to stand against other cultures and keep us from being destroyed from within. Again, this is something that should be self-explanatory. If everyone's on board with the agenda, if everyone's propagating the culture and propagating the ideology and moving forward within the construct of traditional Ahrimanism, then we should all be sort of bound to each other, connected to each other. And if we're bound to each other and connected to each other, we're not going to attack each other. Because as might suspect that's just going to create a negative feedback loop and bring the entire group down and destroy the self and destroy the group. And we have gone to great lengths to assure that that does not happen. We do not accept people who cannot demonstrate fidelity to their fellow Ahrimanists and to the people closest to them and to themselves. So if you're someone who indulges in self-deception and self-hatred and seeks to propagate that in others who are close to you, like so many people do, we're not going to allow that to happen, because we're not going to let you put us into a state of misery where you're going to have control over us and you're going to have control over the group. Things like that aren't going to happen here. Okay, the next Ahrimani virtue is self-control and self-discipline. Again, more common sense things here. Okay, so if you're building something, you need to start with a foundation. You need to make it a solid foundation that the entire structure that you're building can rest upon. And so what you're doing with the nightly rituals is you're creating that foundation through self-knowledge and through the knowledge of the Deva, the Div, and the Du, and the Droog, and the other entities that are out there that we work with or that recognize. Okay? And by building that foundation within yourself and making the connections as you go along with that foundation, then you're creating a framework that all your workings are going to proceed through, that's going to shape your entire perspective on how you look at life. So pretty much regardless of whatever perspective or philosophy that you embrace beforehand, after you go through the process of the nightly rituals, and if you keep up with the process of the nightly rituals, it's going to expand. And you do have to do the nightly rituals consistently. You have to do them every night, preferably. You can take 2, maybe 3 days at the most to take a rest if you need to, because it is something that takes an effort. You know, especially, it's just like any routine or, you know, workout regimen, things of that nature, except it's a spiritual regimen. It's a spiritual workout routine. Okay, it takes time. It takes time to instill that in yourself. Some people, for example, in martial arts, don't develop the discipline and the determination that they need to continue pushing when things are difficult for years. You know, and a lot of that depends on who else is involved in what you're doing, and whether or not they're feeling the same way, or, you know, whether or not there are people who have gone before you who can kind of help you push through that. And that's what the church is for. You know, is for people who want to follow this path, who get on it and then they get a little bit lost or misguided, or they're not really sure how to proceed next. Well, that's why we have the clergy and other people who have gone through this first. And then that ties back into fidelity. So, and it ties back into the cast iron will and constitution. Okay, if you've got a cast iron will and the constitution to be able to do this every day and to sort of inflict this upon yourself, because it is the spirit of what Anton LaVey was trying to communicate with the Satanic Bible about self-transformative psychotrauma. That is what you're doing to yourself. You're creating an experience for yourself to experience to affect you in a way that, you know, that's tied to your intention. And the passage that goes along with this says, "As in hell, we should amass power, strength, and pleasure. Never allow yourself to become drunk with any. Intoxication of any kind can derail your focus and lower your inhibitions to the point that you lose your ability to connect with the invisible." And so that's another thing as well, is something that we've noticed in people who have come to the religion or in the occult in general as well, is that there are a lot of people with substance abuse problems who get so focused on the effects of the drugs that they lose sight of what the actual mystical, spiritual, and shamanistic aspects of those herbs were meant to be used as. It wasn't something that you were supposed to use every day. You're not supposed to be taking forest mushrooms every day to expand your consciousness, or tripping acid and Molly these is not, it's not a situation that's set up with intelligent baselines or any of that. And so that, for me, at least, is why it doesn't have as much validity as something like traditional Ahrimanism, where you're drinking the soma while you're doing the yasna and things like that. And when you're doing a quarterly fire ritual, yagyu is what it's called, and you're taking the hensbane and the bloodroot and you're throwing that into the fire, because that is going to have some effects as well, the smoke from that. And that's what it's meant to be used for in psycho-spiritual medicine. Okay, this next one might come as a shock to people who are aware of our public profile and the reputation that we have in the community. Perhaps if you've been talking to other groups about us, they might be saying many things about us that would lead you to believe that we do not view this as a virtue. But the next Ahrimani virtue that I want to go over is politeness. Okay? So, I am a person in reality, surrounded by the enemy at all times, and I will maintain the awareness for self-preservation. An awareness of the enemy and its attitude toward you must be taken into consideration, and using the social nicety of politeness, which the enemy generally lacks, is a double-edged sword. So, I think it was James Mattis who said, be polite, be courteous, but have a plan to meet everyone you kill. No, wait, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Be courteous, be polite, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet. So, that's something to think about with politeness. So, General James Mattis, also known as Mad Dog Mattis, General of the Marines, I'm sure he's killed quite a few people, and it seems that his personal philosophy is that you should be polite while doing it. I think that's an interesting thought. So, and this also it kind of governs how you are supposed to interact with people who are people who are outside the circle, who are outside the group, who aren't in the culture or the religion, who aren't familiar with the ideology. Because when you're doing something so outlandish as devil worship, a lot of people are going to come at you sideways. And you got to know how to react to them in such a way that it's going to create a situation where you're not going to be in trouble for being a victim, if that makes sense. So, for example, in a domestic violence situation where a boyfriend has been abusing his girlfriend and then calls the cops on her, and at that point the cops are going to take her to prison, or to jail, that is, to holding, because even though she's the victim, she's not the one who called the cops. And if there are any defensive wounds on the boyfriend, then that's just going to reinforce the narrative that this manipulative person has set the situation up to reinforce. Okay, so what this means with politeness and in relation to traditional Ahrimanism and devil worship and the virtues is that you have to consider what the polite thing to do is in situations, and consider things like cultural differences, and to have awareness of the people who are around you, because if they are not within your circle of trust or the religion or any of that, they're not part of the dogma, then there's someone who's going to possibly be a threat to you. Not for any reason that you've given them, but just because you're an Ahrimanist, you're a devil worshipper, you're someone that they ideologically have been programmed to believe is an enemy with no chance of reconciliation. There's a lot out there propagated by people who are enemies of freedom. Okay, so you have to be aware of these things, and you have to be aware that there are going to be people that you meet who have this mindset of spiritual warfare, of tribalism, and you are outside their tribe. Just as they are not within the dogma, we're not within their circle. And so they are unconsciously going to treat us as we consciously treat them. and this is something that isn't very well studied, you know, and when it comes to interpersonal psychology, this is something that most people don't think about actively. But that's one of the things with evil thought, evil mind, with the first Ahrimani virtue, vengeance, that you're going to have to keep in mind. And that's why these virtues are in place. That's why you're meant to internalize these virtues by studying them and by doing the nightly rituals, is because it's a framework that you're pushing through your mind again and again and again and again, so that it leaves an imprint on your psyche, and so that you automatically, subconsciously react within the framework set up by the virtues. Okay. And that is why I view Ahrimani Enlightenment as a consciousness manual, because that is, at the heart of it, what it is. Other than a jumping off point for people who are new to the religion. The next Ahrimani virtue is diligence. Father Ahrimani expects us to gain knowledge and to forever press forward, forging ourselves. We are never expected to go beyond our nature, just press our limits. We separate ourselves from all other cultures, RHP or LHP, by acknowledging the need to bring our works to our highest standards with diligence and hard work. So, as you can see, and you can probably piece together by the way we're going through this, is that each of the virtues builds upon the other virtues and works hand in hand with it. Okay, that's something that most people miss because they haven't read our works yet, or because, you know, someone's warned them away from our works, and instead of thinking for themselves and making their own decisions, they're just doing what they're told, like so many people who are still stuck. In regards to diligence, while it works with the other virtues, it also is something that you're meant to think about, to focus on primarily when you're doing the nightly rituals, because you have to do them every night, or at least every other night, so that you can keep this going through your mind and keep it constant, so that it keeps that imprint, and so that things don't change and you have to start over again and you've lost all your progress. You don't want that. Nobody wants that. And to keep that from happening, you have to be diligent. And it's easy at first when the nightly rituals don't have too many layers of complexity, but the further you get into them, and as you gather the materials that you need to continue growing, it's going to get harder and harder to keep track of all the little bits and pieces that make the thing work. And that is why diligence is an Ahrimani virtue. Because the devil is in the details. Okay, and the last one, which I think is one of the most important virtues in traditional Ahrimanism, which our enemies are going to tell you that we lack this virtue, and along with politeness, they're going to say it's something that doesn't fit in with our philosophy, and that we are just incapable of it, and that is the traditional Ahrimanism virtue of honor. So, my fulfillment and unrepentance of sin I do in fearlessness, knowing my soul is destined. May all wickedness of all evil ones of the earth of 7 dimes reach the width of the earth, the length of the rivers, the height of the moon in their original form. May it fiendishly live long. It comes from my command. You must work your wickedness within your means, and if you cross the line to where you can't face the black mirror, where you cannot reflect upon your actions without recoiling, where you cannot love the ugly side of yourself, the shadow side of your mind, then you must rebalance your honor, because this is your internal guiding point. Okay, so when we're talking about pressing our limits with diligence, and when you're doing the nightly rituals, and when you're exploring yourself and the things that belong to you and don't belong to you, okay, your honor, your personal morals or virtues, in alignment with the Ahrimani virtues, in alignment with the 13 Ahrimani steps of faith, that's what's going to guide you and keep you from straying too far past your limits and maybe getting yourself into trouble. So that would be something like putting yourself in a situation that you're not equipped to handle yet, or confronting enemies on the material plane that you don't have the resources or knowledge to deal with. So your honor is what's going to keep you in check whenever you start to get out of hand with yourself, and if there's not any brothers or sisters around to help guide you. If you're not in the city of Oklahoma City, in Oklahoma, where the dogma is, and you don't have the clergy right there to help guide you and to look over your shoulder as you're going over this path, then honor is what's going to keep you from slipping off. Okay. And as much as we try to provide a support net for folks who want to get into this, there are going to be times when you don't have access to the clergy and when you don't have access to that help, because Father Ahrimani tests the people in his religion. He tests them with fire, he tests them with ice. So there are going to be times when you're going through anguish, because he is the spirit of anguish. That is what Mainyu means. It is the spirit of anguish, and so it's part and parcel with his worship. Okay, and that's all for the traditional Ahrimani virtues. I'm just going to finish off this video with the Deva worshippers' decree. So decrees are fairly common in some other religions, and we have our own. I am a Deva worshipper, a traditional Ahrimanist. I am a living embodiment of Ahzi-Dahaka, and I rule over myself. I watch over those who watch over me. I respect all life, meaning I will only kill in self-defense or defense of those whom I watch over. If you are without, then you must earn my respect. Should the mundane use the enemy's name in my presence, I shall become hostile to the pious. As the devil shifts, I also shall shift, so that I may take advantage of whatever situation I find myself in. I am a person in reality surrounded by the enemy at all times, and I will maintain the awareness for self-preservation. I understand the law and its consequences, and will work around them to attain my earthly goals. My plans are mine and mine alone, and I will use the mundane to execute them. As a Deva worshipper, I hold myself to the highest standards, while knowing others vary in degrees of degeneration. I will take vengeance on those who cross me, to what degree I see fit. I establish my beliefs in accordance with the Ahrimani's 13 steps of faith, knowing that Taos is my guardian and guide. I know I am predestined for hell. Proudly I walk this world, knowing I have Ahrimani's favor. And this is all within Ashemaogha, Dastur Adam Daniels' new book. And with that, I bid you a good day.